Please welcome the President of the United States, accompanied by the Secretary of Transportation and Advocate, Ashton Mota.
Good afternoon. Please be seated. First of all, thanks to everyone here for your leadership and your representation. And Mr. President, thank you for your many years advocating LGBTQ plus equality and for everything you've done to assemble an administration that looks like America. And for all that he has done to help people see themselves in a new light of belonging and possibility, on a point of personal privilege, I'd like to recognize my husband, Ashton. Dr. Biden, an honor to be with you as well. Even for a cabinet member, I got to tell you, being in the East Room is not something you get to do every day, and certainly not often 2 days in a row. But about 24 hours ago, with enormous pride, I sat right about there and watched the president announce a bipartisan deal to make some of the most significant infrastructure investments in the history of the Republic. And it felt good. I want to say that whenever I'm in here, I always think about when I first saw this room, first saw these walls and the paintings and the famous gold curtains, which, of course, was on TV, like everybody else, on a small TV set in South Bend, Indiana. I watched TV as much as any other kid growing up in the 90s, maybe watched the news a little more than most kids, and learned a lot about how the world works. I remember being 15 and seeing stories about President Clinton's nominee for an ambassadorship who couldn't even get a vote in the Senate because he was gay. I remember at 16 looking at that same television set and seeing the face of Matthew Shepard, who was beaten and left to die because he was gay. At that age, I had never even heard the term LGBT, let alone begun to realize that any of this had anything to do with me. But I watched the news, and I learned. I learned that being LGBTQ plus was something that could cost you your job, could cost you your life. Not that long ago, well within the lifetimes of many people in this room, being outed could be disqualifying from public service. Any public service, not just being a cabinet officer or a member of the military, but being a bookkeeper or an astronomer for the federal government. I wasn't here for those days, but I became a military officer under Don't Ask, Don't Tell, ran for office in Indiana, time and again facing that choice between service and love, between duty and self. My whole self. And yet today, here I am, here you are, here we are, standing in the East Room in the company of the President of the United States and the First Lady, wishing each other happy Pride. So us even being here proves how much change is possible in America. So many lives have been changed or saved by the sustained advocacy, the moral resolve, the political courage of countless LGBTQ plus leaders and allies, some elected, some invisible, some long gone, some in this room right now. Here we are, but we have such a long way to go. Around the world, LGBTQ plus people face discrimination and danger, especially in some of the same countries where democracy itself has been on the back foot lately. And here in the United States, many basic protections still do not exist. Rates of violence, especially against black trans women, are shocking and disproportionate. And researchers found that last year, 2 in 5 LGBTQ youth seriously considered suicide. There have been great leaps forward in this country, but there are reminders everywhere about what it looks like to move backward. Not just in shocking acts of violence like the Pulse shooting that this country now rightly commemorates, but in the everyday grind of politics as rights and equality come up for debate. There's an especially dangerous political strategy arising in some states right now, as some politicians try to gain advantage by picking on transgender kids, some of the most vulnerable people in this country. There are consequences when politicians and other leaders respond to transgender people's search for equality and belonging by basically denying that someone can be transgender at all. Telling America that transgender people do not exist amounts to telling very real transgender people that they should not exist. And if you are a person in a position of responsibility, you need to understand the weight of your words. You need to understand that if you go around signaling to people that transgender youth shouldn't exist, transgender youth will hear you, and some of them will believe you. So this is a matter of life and death. And supporting and celebrating our LGBTQ plus community is a matter of compassion and decency, and it's a matter of national character, bearing on the question of whether this really can be a country of liberty and justice for all. And I am proud to work for a president and an administration that believes in that more decent and equal America. It's reflected in the very makeup of this administration, full of extraordinary out public servants, including Dr. Rachel Levine. So many talented people whose gifts would not have been available to the American people not long ago. And when it comes to policy, the Biden-Harris administration is working for that better America every day. From ending the trans-military ban, to vigorous executive action against discrimination and harassment, to this White House's strong and unequivocal support for the Equality Act, which must pass, and we thank the congressional leaders here for making sure that that's going to happen. So, to everyone in this room and everyone out there around the country and even around the world, to those youth who wonder whether they belong, and especially to those for whom doubt or fear or danger mean you still can't live fully as your true self, know that a whole lot of us have your back, starting at the top, and yes, happy Pride. So with that, speaking of our amazing youth, I have the privilege of introducing to you an extraordinary young man, somebody whose strength and advocacy and courage can inspire us all. Please welcome Ashton Mota.
Thank you so much, Secretary Buttigieg, and good afternoon, everyone. My name is Ashton Mota. I use he, him pronouns, and I'm honored to be here with you all today. I'm a 16-year-old, Black, Afro-Latino high school student from Lowell, Massachusetts. I also happen to be transgender. This means that while I was assigned female at birth, I've always known in my heart that I'm the young man standing here before you today. I transitioned just before the 7th grade. I decided to tell my mom on my 12th birthday, yes, my birthday, because in my head I thought, well, she can't get mad at me on my birthday. I was scared because I didn't know how she would react, but she told me she loved me, that I was her child, and she would support me so I could be the person I was meant to be. My parents believe that me, my 4 siblings, and all children deserve to be loved and celebrated for who they are. Most people take having a loving home for granted, but for so many, including for 2 of my siblings, having a loving home can save lives. After coming out, it didn't take my family and me long to realize and learn that there are many transgender youth, especially transgender youth of color, who are not supported by their families and therefore experience homelessness. 2 of my siblings are young, transgender women of color and are a part of the foster care system. I've been with my family for a little over 2 years, and I've witnessed firsthand how surrounding them with love and affirming who they are has allowed them to grow into the beautiful souls that they have always been. It's simple. When children are loved, we thrive. Because of the love and support I've received, I've become a proud advocate for the trans community. After I came out, I fought a bill in the Massachusetts legislature that would have harmed young transgender Americans. I also am a leader with the Gender Cool Project, a nationwide movement that lifts up the positive stories of young transgender and non-binary people by showing people who we are, not what we are. We are future software engineers, teachers, elected officials, and change makers. These are the stories we tell. Most people have never met someone who is transgender, but when they meet us, see us, and hear our story, they realize we're just like all other young people. We sleep in late, we love spending time with our friends, and we make our communities better. The truth is that there are hundreds of thousands of transgender and non-binary young people like me who are thriving in our country. But today in America, the LGBTQ+ community, especially trans women of color, continue to face discrimination, homelessness, and hate. And trans teenagers and kids like me wake up to headline after headline about bill after bill that prevent us from joining a sports team, receiving health care, or even just using the bathroom. This is why passing the Equality Act is so important. It will give LGBTQ+ people like me the opportunity to walk into the world as our true, authentic selves without having to worry about discrimination just because of who we are or who we love. I want to thank President Biden for the protections his administration has put in place for LGBTQ+ people nationwide. While we know there's work to be done, these efforts are deeply meaningful to so many young people like me. President Biden has always stood up for his family, and I know he'll always stand up for my family too. Mr. President, thank you for having our back. It is my great honor to introduce to you the 46th President of the United States, Joe Biden.
My name's Joe Biden. I'm Joe Biden's husband. Ashton, thank you. You seemed awfully comfortable up here. I don't know. I'm not sure I'll be around, but, you know, if you're here, just Don't pretend you don't know me, okay? Your story, your leadership, and your mom is an inspiration. Your mom. If my mother were here, she'd look at you and say, honey, God love you, dear. God love you. What you do, what you did, what you continue to do. I want to thank Secretary, well, first of all, I want to say to Ashton, belated happy birthday, Ashton. If you could hear us inside, we were singing happy birthday to him. We got a bunch of cupcakes, but not enough for everybody. Mr. Secretary, thank you. You're the best, man. Look, our presence here this afternoon makes a simple, strong statement. Pride is back at the White House. For this community, for our nation, and for the world, Pride Month represents so much. It stands for courage. The courage of all those in previous generations and today who proudly live their truth. It stands for justice, both the steps we've taken and the steps we need to take. And above all, Pride Month stands for love. You know, being able to love yourself, love whomever you love, and love this country enough to make it more fair and more free and more just. You know, during the campaign, Tim Gill and Scott Miller, and one of them is here today. I don't want to embarrass him. He always gets mad when I do that. Brought me and Jill to visit the Stonewall Inn. I wanted to go, and they offered to take me. We wanted to pay tribute to that hallowed ground that represents the fight to ensure that all people are treated with dignity and respect. Just a few minutes ago, surrounded by the survivors of family members we've lost, I signed a bill consecrating another piece of hallowed ground, the Pulse nightclub. And I want to thank all of the members of the United States House of Representatives and the United States Senate for standing up and making sure that will never be forgotten, never be forgotten. The site of the deadliest attack affecting LGBTQ plus community in American history. It's now a national memorial. This month, on the way to the office, I walk through from the residence to the Oval Office every morning. I walk through a hallway lit with rainbow colors of pride, which you'll have a chance to see in just a few minutes. You'll see a candle carried during the AIDS vigil in the early 90s by a pair of sandals belonging to Matthew Shepard. They're reminders of how much this community has suffered and lost. We're also reminders of this community's incredible resiliency, incredible contributions, including, we just saw, the National Football League and the National Women's Soccer League. All of you here, Henry Munoz and Kyle, good to see you, man. I had the opportunity to officiate at their wedding. And Representative Malcolm Kenyatta, where are you, Malcolm? Good to see you, man. And Dr. Matt Miller. They stole the show at the Democratic Convention. And my friend Sarah McBride. Where's Sarah? Sarah worked closely with my son, Bo, when he was Attorney General of the state of Delaware and is now serving Delaware as well as one of the first openly transgender state legislators in history. Senator. We just heard from our history-making Secretary of Transportation, and we have today the first openly transgender person ever confirmed to the U.S. Senate. You just met her, Dr. Levine. Representation matters. Recognition matters. But there's something else that matters. Results. Results. I'm proud to lead the most pro-LGBTQ equality administration in U.S. history. And even on my very first day in office, the first executive order I signed was to change the whole of the federal government to commit to work aggressively to root out discrimination against LGBTQ plus people and their families. That was the first executive order. I ordered our agencies, every agency, to rapidly implement the Supreme Court's ruling in Bostock, which affirmed that civil rights protections on the basis of sex apply to sexual orientation and gender identity. And as a result of that executive order, the Department of Housing and Urban Affairs announced that it would take steps to protect LGBTQ plus people from discrimination in housing and ensured critical protection for transgender Americans experiencing homelessness. The Consumer Financial Protection Bureau announced it would work to combat discrimination against LGBTQ plus people in credit and lending. The Department of Health and Human Services announced it would protect against discrimination in healthcare services. And just last week, the Department of Education made clear that Title IX protections apply to sexual orientation and gender identity and prohibit discrimination. As every speech for the nation's story. And a moment ago, I signed an executive order to advance diversity, equality, and inclusion and accessibility across the entire federal workforce. The order directs the entire federal government to eliminate barriers so people from every background and walk of life have an equal opportunity to serve our nation, including LGBTQ plus folks and all employees in underserved communities. Look, I also was proud to rescind the discriminatory and un-American ban on openly transgender service members. Today, we're joined by Lieutenant Colonel Bree Friend. Bree, Colonel. Thank you. One of the highest ranking openly transgender service members in the United States military. Lieutenant Colonel Friend, thank you for your service to our nation. We owe you. Thank you. And everyone who has served, everyone deserves absolute high quality of health care. That's why I was so pleased that last week, Secretary McDonough announced the Department of Veterans Affairs beginning the process to provide more comprehensive gender-affirming care at for our nation's transgender veterans. We're also making equality the centerpiece of our diplomacy around the world. We believe LGBTQ plus rights are human rights. In February, I signed a presidential memorandum establishing that it's the policy of the United States to pursue an end to violence and discrimination on the basis of sexual orientation or gender identity. This month, pride flags are flying, as some of my friends in the Obama-Biden administration who are openly gay, they are flying in more than over 130 U.S. embassies around the world. A powerful symbol of our commitment to safety, dignity, and opportunity for all. And today I'm proud to announce that Jessica Stern, who many of you know as an LGBTQ plus special envoy at the State Department. And yes, we're also making progress, but I know we still have a long way to go and a lot of work to do. But we must protect the gains we've made and fend off the cruel and unconscionable attacks we're seeing now to ensure that everyone enjoys the full promise of equality and dignity and protection. When I was vice president, I was proud, although it somewhat surprised some people in the administration at the moment. And by the way, I did tell the president that I would not go out and proselytize, but if I was asked, I would not remain quiet. The president, I was proud, have called for marriage equality along with Barack Obama, because at the time I said, love is love, period. 6 years ago tomorrow, when the Supreme Court ruled in favor of marriage equality, we're all reminded of the White House lit up in rainbow colors. Shortly thereafter, I went to New York to celebrate with my friend Evan Wolfson and a team from At Freedom to Marry. The joy was palpable. But we knew then, as we know now, that our work is unfinished. When a same-sex couple can be married in the morning but denied a lease in the afternoon for being gay, something's still wrong. In over half of our states, LGBTQ plus Americans still lack explicit state-level civil rights protections to shield them from discrimination. As I said as a presidential candidate in my first joint address to Congress, it's time for the United States Senate to pass the Equality Act and put the legislation on my desk. Put it on my desk. Harvey Milk was right when he said, quote, "It takes no compromise to give people their rights." It takes no compromise to give people their rights. And by the way, this bill doesn't just protect LGBTQ plus people. It's also going to strengthen existing civil rights protections for people of faith, people of color, people with disabilities, women in public accommodations like doctors' offices, parks, and gyms. I want to thank the leaders of the Congressional Equity Caucus for their continued work to make it happen. The Equality Act will also help protect against the disturbing proliferation of anti-LGBTQ bills we're seeing in state legislatures. So far this year, hundreds of anti-LGBTQ bills have been introduced in state legislatures. More than a dozen of them have already passed, more than a dozen of them. These are some of the ugliest, most un-American laws I've seen, and I've been here a while. Many of them target transgender children, seeking to prevent them from receiving the appropriate medical care, for using the bathroom in high schools while they're with the one where they'll be most safe, even preventing them from joining sports teams with their classmates. Let's be clear. This is nothing more than bullying disguised as legislation. As I've said before many times, transgender kids are some of the bravest people in the world. I mean it sincerely. You just saw it with Ashton, and you'll see it with several other young people here. It takes courage to be true to your authentic self and to face of these kinds of discrimination you know exist. It takes a toll. We know more than half of transgender youth seriously consider suicide just in the past year. These young people aren't hurting anyone, but these laws are hurting them. They've got to stop. Our deceased son, Beau, when he was Delaware's Attorney General, was one of the first AGs in the country to call for legislation to establish legal protections on the basis of gender identity to protect trans people. And now the Department of Justice has filed statements of interest in cases challenging two of those bills that got passed, explaining why they're so unconstitutional. So we have to work. We have to work to do so much in these areas, to support seniors aging in isolation without support, to confront disproportionate levels of homelessness and poverty and unemployment in the LGBT community, to address the epidemic and level of violence against transgender people, especially transgender women, has been mentioned before, women of color. In the coming days, my administration is going to have more to say about that. And to finally eradicate the AIDS epidemic. I'm not sure I'm allowed to talk about this. But our son, Beau, was a decorated war veteran, Attorney General of the state of Delaware, and should be standing here instead of me. Came home from war after a year in Iraq, and before that, 6 months in Kosovo. And what he did, he decided he was going to set up a foundation for LGBTQ youth, but primarily focusing on transgender youth. And he took all the money left from a campaign he was going to run for governor and put it in, and a lot more. And is working with everyone from YMCAs to all the areas where young people can find some solace. His buddy Chris Coons and my buddy Senator Coons knows what he's done. The point is, a lot of transgender youth, those who commit suicide, based on the studies his foundation has done, do it because their mom doesn't understand. Because mom or dad says you can't be here anymore, or rejected. So folks, we got a lot of work to do. A lot of it's basically public education. Let me close with this. When you go downstairs and see some of the Smithsonian exhibit, you get a sense of the long, long journey and how long it's been and how far we've come, if you've come, but how much further we have to go. So this afternoon we celebrate, but tomorrow we go back to work. Progress won't come easily. It never has. We're going to stand strong, stand together, and I promise you we will succeed. I promise you. I said to folks earlier, you know things, why I always get asked by the press, why are you so optimistic, Biden? Well, as my neurosurgeon once said, I'm probably a congenital optimist, but beyond that, it's a simple proposition. Look at the young people, straight and gay, doesn't matter. They're the least prejudiced, this generation, the most open, the most giving, and the best educated generation in history. It's a fact in all of history. And look where they are. Look how it's changing. It's changing in ways that in my generation 270 years ago, you get beat up for defending somebody. But really and truly, there's a great reason for hope. And so much talent can be unleashed by embracing the LGBT plus community, Q plus community. So I want to thank you and say, happy Pride. May God bless you all and may God protect our troops. Thank you.